In the wake of the UK deciding to leave the European Union, the Montfort University's Professor Dominic Shellard is visiting capital cities across Europe to speak about what Brexit really means for the UK, what it means for DMU, and what it means for British higher education in general. Professor Shellard, welcome.
Thank you.
Firstly, if you could explain to us, why are you doing this tour?
Well, it was really important, I think, to come out to Cyprus in particular. We have a very large number of Cypriot students, to offer some reassurance about the fact that the UK is still very open for business in terms of higher education after Brexit, but also to have some honest and open discussions about what Brexit might mean for the UK and for DMU as well. So we partnered with the Great Campaign, which is based at number 10 Downing Street. We're going to five key European cities over the next 5 weeks, to have an opportunity to talk about DMU, but also to allow people to ask questions about what the aftermath of the 23rd of June will entail.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding what Brexit really means for the UK and the European Union. In the UK, obviously, there's been a lot of change in the government. There's a new education secretary as well. Do you think this doesn't really help students that are considering to go to the UK to study at the moment? Would you understand why they're very sceptical at the moment?
Well, there's no doubt that the Remain campaign had no plan for losing, and the Leave campaign had no plan for winning. So 3 weeks after the Brexit vote, there was a lot of instability. But we now do have a new Prime Minister. She set out quite clearly that she doesn't want to trigger Article 50 until 2017. And they've made some good decisive announcements about loans, for example, for EU students. So one of the biggest uncertainties that EU students had was if they come to the UK to study at DMU in September, would they still be able to access the same loans that they had before? And the answer is yes. We've announced, secondly, today at DMU that we're freezing our tuition fees for EU students for those who come in 2016, 2017 and 2018. So we are able now to offer some more stability. There are clearly lots of things that remain to be determined, but I think it's still a very, very good value proposition for Cypriot and EU students to come to the UK to study.
You touched briefly at the beginning that there's a lot of Cypriot students at DMU and the UK in general. Can you just go into a little bit more detail as to why Cyprus is one of the destinations on this tour and why, in fact, it is the first one?
Well, we're really proud of our connections with Cyprus. Historically, we've had a large number of students coming to DMU for many years. And part of the reason for that is that word of mouth works very effectively in Cyprus, and Cypriot students have a good time at DMU. So the event today, we had prospective students who are currently studying, and also some alumni as well. So the reason why we wanted to start at Cyprus is because it's our largest country in terms of EU students at DMU. And that's really something we're really proud of. And we wanted to come to a country with whom we have excellent relations. We've got excellent links with our agents, with our alumni, with the Director of Higher Education, and we wanted to offer reassurance, but also celebration of our Cypriot links.
What is the worst case scenario, shall we say, for Cypriot students wanting to study in the UK post-Brexit? And in the UK in general, if you can answer that, and also for DMU?
I mean, there are no immediate impacts for Cypriot students because they're going to be able to come in September 2016 on the same terms and conditions. I would be very disappointed if a deal wasn't done to ensure that they could continue coming from 2017, and I have every expectation that that would be the case. For me, the worst case scenario is probably leaving the European Union. I don't want us to leave the European Union. I think every university was campaigning to stay. And it's interesting that if you look at the people who voted, it was pretty much people over 50 voted to leave, people under 50 voted to stay. We had a referendum on our campus, 78% of our students voted to stay. But I think things won't turn out to be as bad as people fear. I think there's every possibility that in 6 months' time, perhaps the UK might think again. But even if it weren't to, I think that there's no desire on the part of other European countries for Britain to be completely separated from the EU. That would be absolutely ridiculous. And I'm absolutely certain that we'll be able to continue to offer a brilliant experience for Cypriot students at DMU. I have no doubts about that at all.
So do you think there is a small glimmer of hope that the UK might not actually leave the EU?
Well, I can only offer a personal opinion, but I think it's very significant that yesterday Theresa May, the Prime Minister, said to Angela Merkel in Berlin, her first overseas visit as the new Prime Minister, that she wouldn't trigger Article 50, which is the starting process for the 2 years of negotiations to leave the European Union until 2017. That's disappointed a lot of Leave campaigners who wanted it to be exercised almost immediately. So if I was Angela Merkel now, I'm obviously not, and I wouldn't presume to give her advice, but I would be thinking quite carefully about, is there something that could be done about freedom of movement? Is there anything that she could give to Theresa May, just on the off chance that in 5 months' time she might want to go back to the House of Commons, to Parliament, or even back to the country, and say, look, there was this vote, it was extremely close. The vote was only 52-48% in favour of leaving. 17 million voted to leave, but 16 million voted to stay. 18 to 24-year-olds in the UK, 80% voted to stay. There's a lot of strong feeling that perhaps we ought to think about this again. So if there was any way in which the European leaders, and we should probably take some lessons from the Greek Prime Minister, he's an expert in persuading his country to change their mind in terms of referenda. Perhaps we should take some of his advice and see how we could perhaps have a corrective referendum. So what I'm really saying is that, there's all to play for in the next 5 to 6 months. And if we're playing a small part in reassuring colleagues in Europe that we are really proud to be part of Europe, then I'm very pleased to be able to do that with DMU.
Obviously, with Brexit, there's so many different issues that need to work out, and one of them is obviously the residency rights of a lot of EU nationals currently working in the UK universities. So what are the biggest risks for these, for the lecturers, for all the people employed at British universities that are EU nationals? Yeah,
this is one of my biggest issues actually. We've launched a petition that I presented to Downing Street last week from DMU. 2,000 people have signed it already, demanding that the EU citizenship, the EU status of our EU staff is confirmed immediately. And I think all the signs are that's going to happen. I don't think there is a desire on the part of the British government at all to send lots of people out of the UK. But we need that resolved quickly, and we will continue to keep up the pressure. I think the second response to that question is that it's very important now that we demonstrate how much we value EU citizens in the UK. There was a lot of discussion about migration during the referendum campaign that frankly was unsustained and based on untruths. The bottom line is that immigration diversity in the UK is one of our greatest strengths. Our National Health Service is built on the diversity of its workforce. And I think I can speak for colleagues and students at DMU when I say that we are absolutely committed to rallying around the cause that says that diversity and migration should continue in the way that it has done for centuries to build up our great country.
On a bit of a lighter note, obviously DMU is based in Leicester. Why is Leicester a great place for Cypriot students to study and live there?
Well, obviously, DMU is a brilliant university, but I mean, look at what happened to Leicester City last season. I mean, 2 seasons, so we sponsor Leicester City, we sponsored them for 4 years, and 2 seasons ago they were fighting relegation. About a year ago, they appointed this manager, Claudio Ranieri. The local newspaper, the Leicester Mercury, said, "It's a disaster, who is he? He's just been in charge of the Faroe Islands or somebody," or whatever it was. He was absolutely useless. Greece, sorry, Greece. I do apologise to connecting the Faroe Islands with Greece. But, it was just kind of, he wasn't expected to do anything than relegate the team. It got to Christmas, they got 40 points. It got to February, they got 50 points. And suddenly people thought they might get into Europe. When it got to April, and 1.2 billion people were watching on television every match, the focus on Leicester was unbelievable. And I never, when I'm overseas now, have to explain where Leicester is. And we have players who come to our campus. Christian Fuchs is the captain of Austria. He was on our campus a month or so ago speaking to our students. It's just a fantastic place for Cypriot students to come to get a sense of this kind of buzz. We also discovered, our university partners, University of Leicester, discovered Richard III, the King, under the car park about sort of 2 years ago. But I think above all for young people, there's no more exciting place to study. Fantastic club scene, great restaurants, great bars, 2 enormous universities. It's a very young town, very diverse. It's the place to be.
I'd just like to end on a very serious note, which is the fact that you don't support Leicester, you support QPR. Do you think you could ever do a Leicester?
Oh, every football fan outside of Leicester is now saying, can we do a Leicester? If we finish 11th in the Championship, I'll be thrilled.
Thank you, Professor Shellard.
Thank you very much.